Hi, and welcome to another finished object episode here at M1 Yarns and the Michigan Makers Podcast. I'm Jamie, your host. Fresh off the knitting needles today is the Gimmstein dress by Johanna. And this is one of my Rhinebeck sweaters, but it's a dress. It is a bottom-up pattern, but I knit it top down. So basically, if you haven't watched previous episodes where I've talked about this garment, I took the pattern and kind of reworked it, figured out all the math and changing increases to decreases and decreases to increases and all that good stuff so that I could knit it top down, which is my preferred method of knitting. And if you're new to knitting, the reason why I really prefer top down is so that you can try it on as you go. You'll really get a feel for your proportions. And I'm only 5'3", so most patterns I have to do some like petite conversions for, whether it be in the sleeves or in the length of the waist or something. But I really think that the beauty of knitting is that we're all knitting custom clothing. And so it was really important to me. I loved the design, but I just did not want to knit it as written bottom up. And a lot of people have reached out to me with how to convert a pattern. It does take some experience, but essentially the key thing that I did was after I purchased the pattern on Ravelry, I printed it out and almost literally like cut each section and then rearranged it. So, for example, the last page ends with where you would bind off the neck since you're working bottom up. And I took that number that it gives you for what you should bind off, and I knew that was my cast on stitches. And then instead of knitting charts bottom up, you know how like the starting point is, I don't know if I'm mirrored, but you start in the bottom right corner of a chart. You work right to left and then you work bottom up. I work the chart top down to make it right. Increases, like I said, became decreases, decreases became increases, and that meant converting like knit two together to an increase. And then with that, you're doing that in the yoke. And I had to be careful that my increases worked with where the color changes were. So that took a little bit of thought. You just have to be mindful more than anything else. What I will say, as far as if I were to give this a pattern review, the pattern is very wordy. This is one of those where I think it's so critical before you start it. Read every word. Read through it probably twice. Highlight or circle the numbers for the size that you are making so that there's never any doubt of what you're doing, you know, when you get to the next section. I will say that this pattern required a lot of modifications for me, and I don't think it's because I flipped it and knit it top down. I kept all the math of the structure itself the same, but things just were not working out for me. Like when I separated for the sleeves and then picked them back up, I had a lot of fabric. And I mean, you can still kind of see that like here. And I did my best to kind of compensate for that and modify it as I could. I left it a little bit bulky, like I said, with this, in case I wear like a turtleneck or some sort of winter layering in this, so that I would have plenty of room here, you know, to be able to move. Things I also changed. This color here, and also on the, let's see if you can see it without me flashing you, right there on the hem. That is supposed to be what is this, like wine colored? Wine. Oh, and let's talk about the yarn. This is my own hand-dyed yarn. I held worsted weight and mohair together to achieve the Aran weight of the pattern. This is wine. Victorian Rose, Green Olives, Soft Bouquet, Silver Fox, held with a one-of-a-kind ice blue mohair that I had dyed just for myself to play with. Oh, and then the tan is Mushroom. And so let's see what else. The pattern, I'll post a photo here of what the pattern sample looks like. Now, if you'll see on the waist, there's cables, and I omitted that mostly because I don't like attention drawn to this section of my body. And also because when I reworked the pattern, it became very complicated to now be doing, to make sure I had the math right. Because right here in the pattern, you're actually doing waist shaping to create like an hourglass, which I ended up omitting. I did have some waist shaping in here to like really bring it in and then bring it out. But I have more of a, like a boyish, straight figure. I don't have very big hips. I don't have a particularly small waist. It's just kind of straight up and down. So I actually did rip out quite a bit of knitting and then said, forget the shaping, just knit it straight. And that worked best for me. So that being said, I just didn't want the complication of waist shaping and the cables. And they're really just like right here. Not a fan. If you like it, go for it. And then as you'll also see in the pattern sample, there's color work on the bottom. I love how it looks on the sample, but I will say I adhere to the fashion theory that you want one's eyes drawn to the face in fashion. And that is why, you know, jewelry is a thing. You know, decoration on the collar. I'm not a big fan of like ruffles and peplum on the bottom. It doesn't work for me. So as much as I loved the color work along the hem, I just thought, I'll give it a shot. I'll see how it goes, but I wasn't committed. And actually in that color work, there are really long floats in between some sections, almost like, well, you can't really tell what I'm doing here, but like 5 inches in between floats, maybe a little less. And I don't catch my floats. I just let them float. And I had all my stitches for the hem on a really small circular needle, and everything was jammed together, which was a rookie mistake. So I was getting a lot of puckering. So I had to rip that out. I redid it on a longer cord, so my stitches were as they should be when wearing it, as far as like being spaced out. And it was better, but it wasn't ideal. And I thought, you know what? This also is kind of creating like extra fabric around near your knees, kind of the bottom of your thighs. And I just didn't think it would flow well or hang to my liking as far as the drape when walking. And so I ripped out the color work again. And then I just, as you can see here in this finished object photo that I took, I just knit it in one solid color in stockinette. And then I did finish it off with the ribbing that it calls for. And I love the design on the hems of this. You do like several rounds of 1 by 1 in a contrast color. And then you knit 2 rows in stockinette. And it kind of creates this like, almost like a semi I-cord finish. I really love it. And I think I'm going to put that in my mental Rolodex for future use. All this to say, it's an Aran weight, all over, you know, wool and merino, fuzzy, cozy winter dress, which, you know, the designer is from Northern Europe, so very classic. I live here in Michigan, and our winters can be pretty brutal. I have knit one other sweater dress, which I actually really do enjoy wearing on a cold winter's day. Maybe if I'm getting together with knitting friends. So this will be my second knit dress, and I think I will get quite a bit of wear out of this. That being said, I'm taking it to Rhinebeck in a few weeks, and fingers crossed the weather is nice and mild. Last year we had a hot day. This morning I went out and did finished object photos, and the weather was glorious. It was 46 degrees first thing this morning, but by the time I went out and did the photos, it was 54. And I went to a nearby park with some woods, as you can see in my finished object photo. And the lighting was beautiful, that like fall glow, and I was comfortable. So I feel like if it's in the 50s at Rhinebeck, even just 60 degrees, I will be comfortable in this. Of course, we all know that wool breathes. So I'm really happy with this. It did take a lot of trial and error as far as getting the fit how I wanted it, which usually I don't have to do so much with sweaters, probably because I'm a experienced sweater knitter and I've only knit one other dress. So I will say, if you're interested in knitting a dress, obviously it's a lot of knitting. It's like twice the knitting of sweaters. Be prepared. I think the key thing is you have to know your measurements, and you have to do the math to apply your measurements to the gauge and figure out where your waist is, figure out where your hips are, where you need to do shaping if you want to do that, increases, decreases, all that good stuff. I think this is a really good exercise in knowing your body and knitting it for your body, unless it's a gift, of course. But anyway, overall, I'm really happy. I really love the yoke. She has some great designs, so check her out on Ravelry. I also think she has a web page for all her designs, so I will try to link to those below. But I hope to see you guys at Rhinebeck. If you see me, please say hi, and yeah, let me know if you decide to knit this or one of her other designs. She does have quite a few like long sweater tunic kind of things, less of a dress. Anyway, thanks for joining me here for another finished object review, and I'll see you next time. Bye.